The history of human civilization has always been closely intertwined with the history of architecture. Each architectural monument that pushed the discipline forward over the millennia was built out of the convergence of a futuristic vision, unconventional design, and a timeless sense of aesthetics. Ever since the 1970s, Oman has been witnessing an unprecedented urban transformation. Oman's urban development marked a constant negotiation between tradition and modernity, a blend of authentic traditional structures and modern urban sprawls. Currently, Oman's urban landscape is entering a new phase of transformation with state-of-the-art airports, glamorous malls, conventional center, and several classy buildings. At a time when Oman's urban development is at the cusp of major transformation, we need more unleashing of innovative ideas, blending of knowledge and imagination, convergence of multiple futuristic visions. Viewpoints, Sohar International Chairman's Forum, brings in unmatched global insights and knowledge to the Sultanate from some of the biggest names in the world.
Our objective of it is to be a place where we can exchange knowledge, talk about thought leadership, and it is really our suggestion about building a knowledge economy in this country.
Between Oman and Singapore, this friendship which we have, it's not a major friendship, but it's a quiet, unspoken, and a friendship which, in critical moments, can only become more important.
موضوع المستقبل من المواضيع التي يتفق عليها الجميع بأن هناك احتياج كبير جدا في منطقتنا للتحدث عن المستقبل.
Those who are quickest to adapt to the changes sweeping across our world will be those who take the advantage.
You need to set medium and long-term objectives. If you just play the budget year by year, then in the end, you are going to end up in a place where you never wanted to go.
آراء أحد المنصات المهمة جدا من بنك صحار الدولي عبر استضافة مجموعة من الشخصيات العالمية المعروفة. نستمتع دائما بالحديث والحوار ولقاءات ثرية جدا.
The takeaway here is that we have to skill our people, we have to educate our people, and the youngsters will actually drive the economy in the future.
I'd like to thank Sohar International for organizing the series of talks, Viewpoints. It's really very inspiring, very motivating, and very refreshing, to be honest. So we're very grateful for both the platform itself and for the speaker for sharing his insights today.
Your Excellencies, honorable dignitaries, and esteemed guests. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening. My name is Hiyam Al-Jabri, and I'll be the MC for tonight's event. At the outset, and on behalf of Sohar International, I thank all of you for accepting our invitation. Dear guests, the last few weeks have saddened all of us within this nation as we came in terms with the loss of our beloved leader, His late Majesty Sultan Qaboos bin Said. His Majesty Sultan Qaboos, may Allah rest his soul, was a father figure to all of us. We can only pray to Almighty God for mercy and compassion for him, and for us to stay strong. I request our guests to please stand up and pay tribute with a moment of silence in respect to his memory. May God accept our prayers, and may our great leader find peace in paradise. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Sohar International, I would like to welcome you to our 5th edition of Viewpoints, Sohar International Chairman's Forum. Global ideas, local impact. This is what Viewpoints is ultimately constructed to do. It helps us harness global experiences and bring them to our nation by hosting eminent international personalities to help us learn and draw in an inspiration from. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Mr. Mohammed bin Mahfoud Al-Ardi, Chairman of Sohar International, to deliver the inaugural speech and set a pace for today's Viewpoints Forum.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good evening, Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 2021st session of Viewpoints, the platform we will host inspirational leaders from myriad disciplines so they can share with us their experiences, knowledge, ideas, and inspirations. Before we begin, let us reflect on what was a humbling start to 2020, the passing of our great leader and father of the nation, His Majesty Sultan Qaboos bin Saeed, which left us saddened. However, the legacy of His Majesty has left us all with great reason to be optimistic about the future. His vision, his passion, and dedication will live on. And our new leader, His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, will now carry the torch and lead Oman into its coming phases of development, of which we're all excited and eager to embrace, especially those of us at Sohar International, where we are committed to realizing our leaders' economic visions, which we will drive from our recently announced new corporate headquarters in Muscat. Oman has a rich architectural heritage, which is unique in its design and style. Our traditional monuments and houses blend functionality with stylistic elements effortlessly. Moreover, their understated magnificence and grace is unmatched. The evolution of architecture is a measure of a nation's civilization, and Oman's castles, forts, and houses are a testament to its rich architectural style. The Jabreen Castle, which dates back to 1670, and Bahla Fort showcase the high quality of Omani craftsmanship in their detailed latticework, curved arches, and hand-chiseled doors. Both of these have been included in UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The traditional architecture of Oman went beyond being mere style statement by addressing the specific needs of Omani people. For instance, the mountain houses of Musandam employed natural air currents as a cooling system to beat the intense heat of summer months. Oman's fabled Falaj irrigation system, dating back to over 5,000 years, used natural forces of gravity to create an efficient form of water distribution. The Falaj system is today a glowing testimony to the country's rich scientific capabilities, heritage, and culture. Oman's modern-day marvels have preserved and built upon its traditional heritage. The Sultan Qaboos Grand Mosque, the Royal Opera House, the Majlis al-Shura building, and the National Museum of Oman are elegant examples of Omani-style architecture. Architectural marvels have the power of becoming globally recognized symbols associated with a city. Just look at iconic structures like Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, the Mosque of Cordoba, the Shard in London, and the One World Trade Center in New York. They have become defining landmarks, sources of pride for their cities, attracting millions of visitors every year. We at Sohar International are very proud to have partnered with internationally renowned award-winning architect Santiago Calatrava of Calatrava International, who heads the design team for our new headquarters and is also the esteemed speaker at our first edition of Viewpoints tonight. Born in Valencia, Spain, Mr. Calatrava is a man of many talents. He's an internationally renowned architect, structural engineer, sculptor, and painter. The remarkable structures he has built in prominent cities across the globe are marvels in themselves. And taken together, they are so much more than the sum of their parts. They convey a vast and refined artistry and skill set. The Women's Bridge in Buenos Aires, Argentina, the Museum of Tomorrow in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Auditorio de Tenerife in Canary Islands, Spain, and the Liège-Guillemins railway station in Liège, Belgium, are only a few of his iconic structures around the world. Among the many high coveted accolades under his belt are the prestigious Gold Medal of Institution of Structural Engineers, the European Prize for Architecture, the American Institute of Architects Gold Medal, and if that is not enough, the Eugene McDermott Award by the Council of the Arts at MIT. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to hand over to this evening's speaker, the brilliant Santiago Calatrava.
Distinguished authorities, ladies and gentlemen, chairman of the bank, dear friends, it's a real honor for me to speak here to you. And I chose the title for this talk as I have never done before. I am speaking about architecture as an art. Just that you understand the context, when I started as a student, there was another epoch, isn't it? It was another time. There was the late 60s, starting to the 70s, and a lot of social movements and social thoughts was heading, the philosophy of architecture of the time, and our school was also very much involved in this type of thinking. Indeed, is the maturing my mind towards architecture that I arrived to the conclusion that architecture is an art, as painting is an art, as sculpting is an art. And finally, among the artistical traces of the past, eventually those who are more durable, those who takes more time and telling us and speaking us about the past are architectural works. We saw here in the movie before examples like the pyramids, to the Taj Mahal, to Hagia Sophia you mentioned, etc. So we look to our architectural past, and it's an enormous part of our identity. It's also important to know that the people who has built those things, they are very conscient doing new things and new achievements. And indeed, we can approach the language of architecture trying to imitate the fantastic achievement they have done and consolidating also the work they have done with new examples derivated of this what they have done. But another way to be faithful to them, because the things they have done was new, is also doing new things. So, it's not only imitating, but also doing new. Because the things they have done were new, and also they was also revolutionary for the time. And we recognize them, as in their uniqueness and their singularity. So, in all modesty, I took this party. You see, I admire, study, travel, and really, I was moved of gratefulness and emotion, seeing those buildings. But I recognize also the sense of novelty and as the duty as an architect to try, in the modesty of my possibilities, to go this path. Let's start it with images, because I believe, you see, I believe that an image is better than 1,000 words, isn't it? Say the Chinese, isn't it? So this is a show of my with sculptures in public domain. This is the Park Avenue in New York, and here you see one in front of the Seagram building. Is so part of my time goes also over the let's say working almost every day, if not every day, in sculpting or painting. I also very much sketch and all of that, and try to give to the sketches a certain dimension. This is one piece I have done eventually more than 30 years ago, and you see here the result of it. So the research done in the pure plastic world of the sculpture, find his achievement in the architecture. Without this sculpture, this building will not be possible. Here you see also the interior. And why the interior? Because you see, this is the point where, let's say, a great artist like Henry Moore will say clearly architecture is superior to the sculpture in the human scale, because you can penetrate it, you can enter in. It is part of our lives, it's evolving us, and we are living in it, we are spending our time, we are doing and fulfilling our lives in architectural elements. Here also, out of the same piece, applied here for another landscape, by the way, also very similar to the landscape here. This is the Canary Island. When arriving here to the airport and seeing the mountains in the background of the city suggests me very much this type of landscape. This is the concert hall and opera in Tenerife. The previous one was the railway station of Saint-Exupéry, close to Lyon in France. Here you see the interior of the space of the concert hall, and here a view of with the little bit the point of the mont in. Then also another example is that here you see I have done several studies on the human anatomy. Michelangelo used to say, l'architettura dipende dalle membra dell'uomo. Architecture depends on the human limbs and the human body. Of course, because architecture is done for humans, isn't it? So the measure of the man is the measure of everything, but also the measure of the architecture, the proportion, the sense of comfort in a space, the dimensions of this space pass through the dimensions of our body. The height of a chair, the height of a table, the steps we are doing, is all related to our body. And finally, I started in a very synthetic way, being already an engineer, studying the statical system of our vertebral column. And what you see is the way how my body, my column works if I twist like that. So it's working, you see, in the same way as this figure who represents, is done here by cubes in marble and then by wires. And here a building built in Sweden, something like 20 years ago, who is just derivated directly from the shape you saw. It's an apartment building. Then also another approach, more poetic, is this here, is by doing a bridge in Venice. Venice is a city that has, over the Canal Grande, there are 4 bridges. This is Il Quarto, the 4th bridge over the Canal Grande, and there was more than 120 years no bridge has been built over the Canal Grande. It's linking the arrival to Piazzale Roma to the station, Santa Lucia. And you see here the people traversing it, and here also a view from the underground of the bridge. If I am trying to connect, you see the idea of arcs and leaves and movement. Here also another example is the station of Liège-Guillemins in railway station in Belgium. Here also another piece, very early piece. I was eventually 26 years old, 25 years old when I had done that, so a while ago. But those type of very slender shapes, you see, flying, remembers or are recalled also in a way in the architecture of this piece here. Here also an overview of the station. And here the interior, the span. The span is as long as a train. It is around 200 meters, isn't it? So no columns in between except the signalétic. Here are details of the support, where all the forces are coming and are related on both sides, you see, to this type of support, who is emphasizing the point where the whole static or the weight of the roof is coming in. And here is the opening of the station. I'm particularly proud because Liège is not a large city. It has maybe 150,000 inhabitants. And the police tell us there was more than 80,000 persons. So each second person came to the opening, which it is a kind of, it makes you joy. The public buildings are particularly joyful and really I'm very grateful to the fact that I have been involved in many of them because they get enjoyed every day and particularly stationed by thousands of people. And it's a way, to give back to the people a little bit of sense of beauty in the everyday life. This is an agricultural building in Spain in a very beautiful landscape. This is the area of La Rioja in the valley of the Ebro. And this is a sculptor who is owned by the Meadows Museum in Dallas. It's a large sculpture in bronze. It's also a movable sculpture. And you see the order is always the same bar, but put in a sinus form in complementary way. And here the building itself. I try to get the sense of the landscape. First of all, the form you saw before where it comes from. It comes out of the sculpture, but the colors are very much related to the landscape. You see the beige of the ground, and then the gray of the roof, the aluminum roof, and then the background of the mountains. Also here, even the movement of the roofs, pulling up towards the river, you see, has to do also with the tectonic of the mountains behind. So there is a kind of, let's say, very subtle, very, but there is a relation between landscape and building itself. Here, also out of the same concept, a railway station done in Italy, in Reggio nell'Emilia. Reggio nell'Emilia is the next station between Milano and Bologna for the high-speed train. This is the station in this very flat and lovely landscape of La Pianura Padana. Here also another image of the station from one side, and here the interior with the roofs following and the train. Also back to the bridges. Also in the same city, I have done 3 bridges. A large bridge is the longest arc built in Italy, and at the other side, in the background, on both sides, 2 smaller bridges using an arc, but this arc is not longitudinal, but is transversal. Now, what it is interesting, it is sometimes is also important to do a bridge in a minor scale to have the possibility, after having studied the way to do it and how it behaves, to bring it into a major scale. This is in Dallas. Here the bridge is 7 times as big as the previous one. It's in the middle of the city of Dallas over the river. And you see here the skyline and how the arc fits as a part of the skyline in the middle of the city. Another bridge, also interesting, well, as in the presentation was said, you see, I am an engineer. I am proud to be one of them, and also to be confronted to this type of works like bridges. You see, this is interesting, this bridge, because as you can see, there is an heliport. Now, the photo is important for you to understand the shape of the bridge. At the one side, the river is wild, so it can flood almost until just down the bridge, because there is no barrage upstream until they are only the Rocky Mountains where the bridge is, the river started. And at the other side, because there is an heliport, we are limited by the cone of approach through the river where the major part of the helicopters arrives into the heliport. So we was limited by a height of 6 meters, and we need to span almost 140 meters. So we chose a tubular structure, who is very efficient and has given, as a result, this shape of a bridge. So although it seems to be very special, but it's also the result of the need in this particular place. Then another one is a bridge built in Sevilla for the Expo in '92. And here, another sculpture, based also in the equilibrium, is a series of steps done in stone, in black stone, called Nero Assoluto, and then hold each one of them with a wire into the bases and delivering this a little bit unstable equilibrium. And here, the bridge itself is also very much inspired in the idea of the mast and then the cables who are holding the deck. Here, another bridge, very particular. This is in California. Coming out of the same concept, but here is the whole mast and the deck is in steel. And here I'm not compensating with the counterweight of the pylon because the pylon is hollow and the deck very, very light. The deck is also done in glass because here this area of the river is highly protected. And we needed to do a bridge who doesn't give a shadow underwater. So we have used translucent glass who delivers, let's say, a very diffuse shadow and permit the fishes to pound also to let their eggs, you see, under the river, under the shadow of the bridge. Now, you see, it's also interesting, it's called sundial, because being oriented strictly north-south, we could, with the shadow of the mast, deliver the hours of the day. And the schools of the area, they come there and learn to the kids, to understand what is the simple mechanism of a sundial. And also through the length of the shadow, they can also recognize the solstice, the equinox, and all of that. So let's say the bridge itself becomes a tool of education also for the kids in the area. Here, another bridge. Now the inclination is in the other direction. It's like a variant of the previous one, with the particularity that it can turn so that the packboat can come out in Puerto Madero in Buenos Aires. You see it here. The bridge has been classified as a protected by the authority of Buenos Aires. And here also another bridge, this here built in Dublin, Samuel Beckett Bridge. I have also a second bridge in Dublin called James Joyce, both the big writers, you see, of Irish writers of the 20th century. And also similar to the previous one, first of all, we build it apart, and then we transport it in one piece, the whole bridge, which is almost 200 meters long, and using the level of the tide, you see, we could mount it at once. You see, when we enter in the harbor with high tide, then put it on place, and then when the low tide came, we have the bridge in the support. And this is also the bridge itself is, the Argentina one was a pedestrian, this is a traffic and even can hold a tramway, so it's much more demanding. It's the biggest bridge, swing bridge never built. And another aspect of the work of an architect, who is also, in my opinion, very important, is the relation to the city. I want to give you some examples of major works who has generated changes in the city. For example, this is the City of the Arts and Science in my hometown, Valencia. Many years ago, I won the competition to reform an area of the city who was very depressed. It was the area between the harbor and the city itself. And the authority has had the extraordinary idea to introduce cultural buildings in this area, who was, as I say, almost abandoned. And this generates this intervention. You see there the opera, the planetarium, You see also the museum, then we built also 2 bridges, then the Agora, and then close to it, the Oceanarium. And today, you see, the major part of the houses you see in plan, they didn't exist. Even the park didn't exist. They was built as a consequence and as a result of the add value of introducing their cultural elements. Then I will show you, this is a view of the complex. I put pools of water, then the buildings reflect. The beauty of the reflection is that you get double as much for the same, isn't it? Because every building gets reflected. This photo is a courtesy of the photograph who wants this year the International Award for Architectural Photography. It was published a few days ago. And here also you see some of the buildings, they are movable. This is the planetarium. My idea in the planetarium was based in the eye. You see, you go to a planetarium or an IMAX theater to see things and to experience optically. And so the shape of the overall is like the shape of an eye. Here also the Museum of Science, and in the other direction, the opera, who is the largest musical facility in Spain. It has 4 auditoriums, and one of them is for pure opera, as you see here. And here, a view from the planetarium to the opera with one of the bridges. Then also, this is a very interesting project from the ecological point of view. I was invited by the Rio government to do a museum. Usually museums are museums of yesterday or the past, but this is a museum of the future. And they wanted to put a lot of emphasis in all the ecological questions. Nevertheless, because the conference of Rio, something like 30 years ago, was the beginning, the moment zero of the beginning of our ecological preoccupation, who today are so actual. And here you see other things. You see, they give us this wonderful, in this beautiful city, because I have to say Rio is my point, under my point of view, from the natural, naturally embedded as not another city in the world. It's really, it has such a beautiful landscape around. And then they has given us in the harbor this pier to build the museum. Now you see there is this kind of a road passing by who has produced a cut during generations and has made this zone not so vivible like it should be. And then we propose in our museum the reconstruction of the plaza, just we suggest. We didn't say, you have to do that. And then you see, if you show what could come there if the bridge was not there. And then they reflect a couple of months, and then they demolish the bridge. And I have to say the whole area changed completely. You see, so sometimes, you see, I have built many bridges. I think bridges are well done where they should be. They illustrate landscape. They can be very beautiful things. But in our cities, sometimes, you see, emphasizing the traffic and things like that, they can be also, they can have also a negative consequence. I mean, think about Paris without bridges. It will be a completely different city. I mean, bridges are part of the history of our cities. They are enormously important. They are landmarks, and they help our lives in an everyday way. Sometimes it's better to rethink. Then we built finally the plaza and also the museum, as you can see here. It's interesting, we put pools also in the museum, and we are filtering the water of the bay. It's almost like a metaphor, it's possible through filtering and through appropriate treatment of the waters, to achieve that the bay of Guanabara, who is one of the most beautiful in the world, you see, again became clean. And here you see also the enormous queue of people entering. It is the most visited cultural facility those days in Brazil. Here also another interesting job is to work for sports. I think sports is also, as much as ecology, is something who touch each one of us and is make our life better. And I think also is the proper way to compete, you see, in sport, isn't it? And then I was asked by the Greek government to, in a short period of time, to master plan and build the Olympic ring. You see, as in many other projects, I took as an example one of the sculptures you see here, and the sculpture inspired the Olympic flame. You see here the Olympic flame standing, but you see it was, it turns down into the athlete to be enlightened. And here you see the overall master plan. Many of the facilities exist. We refurbish them. We put them new roofs. We create new plazas, new links, new parkings, and all of that. It was a very, very large project. It took us also an enormous amount of work. But it was also, at the end, the satisfaction of do something that you can eventually do once in a life, isn't it? This is the opening ceremony of the Olympics in Athens 2004. I'm really proud about having been part of this endeavor. Then also, coming back to the museums, see, this is my first project in the United States. And I am also especially proud. You will see, like in other projects, they are sometimes movable parts. The movable part you see here, for example, the roof moves. You see, like it was a sculpture. You see, opens and closes, delivering shadow. I think and I believe that the mobility in the future will be a very important element of our architecture. Nevertheless, for energy appropriate buildings, you see, who can transform like sunflowers, can move with the movement of the sun and with the hours of the day. This is images of the interior, and here the building from the exterior. Then also another second building, this very directly related to ecological questions, is the South Florida Polytechnic. Myself, coming from two polytechnics, I studied in Valencia in the Polytechnic, and then later on in the Polytechnic of Zurich, I studied engineering. So I was very familiar with the fact that engineers learn very much from the nature. So the engineering studies born from the empiricism and from the experimentation and the observation of the nature makes the engineers, in my opinion, enormously sensible to all the questions of all the natural questions. Water, I do not know, wind canal test, and all of that. You see construction of bridges, landscapes, and all of that. Here you see the master plan, and here is the building, educational building. It's a central building as an educational building, and then the rest are more subsidiary buildings. And here you see also the roof moves. And the roof is done in a way that the whole building can work autonomously from the point of view of energy. And here is also interesting to see what means an historical site in our time. So I was by case, because we moved as a family, we moved to New York when our kids started studying at Columbia University in the city of New York. And so we thought it's good to stay as a family together, so we moved into New York. This was 2001, we purchased a place, and then we decided to go there, and then it happens, this is what it happens in September 11, and by case, I was involved in the competition for the reconstruction of the World Trade Center, and I was involved together with the Port Authority very intensively in the reconstruction of it, and I have to say, I has had the honor to work with the Port Authority during 14 years. It took, until we fulfill our endeavor. Still today, I am working in the reconstruction of Ground Zero in a small piece I will show you also. This is the sculpture who generates the idea of my building. There is, or the visible part of the building, it is called Mother and Child. It's like a rock chair, you see, it can, and has two pieces. And here is the building itself. The visible part, because indeed we have been involved in the basement of each one of the buildings, and also in the car screaming, and in the reconstruction of the subway, etc., etc. But this is the visible part. It's the visible part close to the memorial, and I wanted from the beginning to say this building, the memorial look for those who passed away. The building is for this American spirit and the human spirit of reconstruction. It is something who has to give hope. It has to be a place where the people come and they feel welcome. And you see, and then where there was destruction, you see this building has to bring the sense of peace, or the sense of welcoming and happiness, or let's say of well-being. And here you see also the contrast between the two buildings. The water here is coming down into the pool, the wonderful memorial, you see, with the water falling into the pool and getting into the center, you see, and our building which is rising up from the ground with the desire of flying up. And here also two interesting parts is the fact that in the main hall, who has the dimensions of twice the Grand Central, and celebrate also, is a building I admire very much, celebrate like Grand Central, you see the sense of heroic communitary spaces, you see the roof opens. So it is retractable and let this gap, who is more than 80, almost 90 meters long. And then you see the light in the ground. It's very important, the light, because the building is not parallel to the grid of New York, it's slightly tilted. And it happens something, let's say, astronomical, very particular. And it is that twice a year, in a very precise moment, the sun makes a way of light in the center through the axis of the building. Through the axis of the building. One day is the 29th of March, and the other is September 11th. And this happens at 9 exactly, I mean, it's difficult to determine it at 9:28. 9:28 is the moment in which the second building has collapsed, and let's say, and the reconstruction started. Or the mind, you know, we have to change, you see, we have to go ahead and all of that. And in this moment, you see the way of light goes just through the middle of the building, isn't it? So in a silent way, architecture can also be the testimony, like, for example, in Abu Simbel, or in many great cathedrals, or all of that, you see the architecture can have also its own language, and can also carry a message, and deliver it and touch and the coming generation without needing to write it anywhere, isn't it? And here also what people does, you see, in they photograph the roofs and things like that, but I like this photo, and here's some images of the interiors. Has an everyday function, you know, they are restaurants, they are shops, there is an Apple store, there is also, you can, I mean, it's very important for the neighborhood. It was, they thought there will be 60, 70,000 persons a day. There are days that they come more than 300,000 persons. So the expectation was overrun by multiple 5 or something like that. Here is also looking it from the street, you know, when you enter through a narrow window, a narrow door, then you get in front of this space. Here also, you see the building has no roof. In the reality also is very interesting, you know, the fact that the building has not only 4 facades, it has 5. The roof is another facade. Why? Nevertheless, because the towers around are so high that everybody can see the building from the top. But also, if you look great buildings of the past, as it was mentioned before, the Taj Mahal or so, you can also look them from the air. They are perfect. Your mosques and all of that, they are also from the top, looking them from the air. They have an order. They have a sense of a global achievement, isn't it? So we try to give, through this plastic understanding. This is the second project I am doing. For a moment, you see, it's just in the obliquous corner on the other side of the second pool of the memorial. We are rebuilding the Greek Orthodox Church, who was also destroyed by the collapse of the Tower number 2, isn't it? And we are, in our days, we hope to finish it in 22. The building is paid by donations. And here, some projects, I am very proud, you see, indeed. I say before, or if I didn't say it, I want to say it now, you see, we are a family company. I started with my wife, who studied law in Zurich and has been always administrating my company and giving me the necessary freedom to dedicate me 100% to the work of, to my work out of the administrative question. Also, 2 of my sons joined our company, and we still are a family company. And my son Michael came in the region 7 years ago, and I mean, I have to say also that he was very much interested in the Arabic culture being a kid. So he asked me when he was eventually 14, 15 years, I would like to learn about the Arabic culture. So I sent him to a friend in Syria who was a doctor who studied with my brother in Valencia. Then he went to Kuwait in the summer, then he went to Qatar and to Dubai and to Egypt. And when he was studying engineering at the Columbia University, he has had to do always a minor in humanistic, and he took Arabic culture and civilization all those years. So that he came here and he felt very much at home from the beginning. And so this brought a series of projects from which we are very proud. I will show you some of them. And here is the one project of, pardon, excuse me, I have to go back. Here it is, hopefully, no. It's a video, hope I can show it. Yeah. This was our entry for the competition for a pavilion in the Expo, who became the national pavilion of the United Arab Emirates. The roof opens like a flower, indeed, and it's all full of sun collectors. So we are dealing there with lead platinum. We want to have an autosufficient, from the point of view of the energy, an autosufficient building. Then this is another project in which we are working those days for the company MR and for our friend Mr. Mohamed Alabar. We are doing this tower here, also as a result of another competition. It's a very tall building. The client announced it as sensibly higher than the Burj Khalifa that himself has built. I cannot tell you how high, but I tell you it's a high building. You see here both Burj Khalifa and the tower. It's an observation tower. And you see it has also a big plaza. We are working also in the whole plaza and the landscaping and also the underground of the plaza, where we have built already the basis and the foundation. And here also how the entry will happen. It happens in the underground, but it's like the upper ground. And then with all kinds of facilities, part of a commercial mall. And then also what it is interesting, as you know, because you have also tall mountains, every 100 meters, the temperature goes down at least 1 degree. And going up, we will have a softer temperature in the extreme periods of the year, so that we can have gardens in the upper part of the tower. And here also very proud, you see, and shows also our link and our devotion, for this part of the world. We was also distinguished by getting awarded with the new embassy in Beijing of the United Arab Emirates. You see it here in a very beautiful plot with the embassy of Japan, the embassy of Iran, and other around. We are doing this building very different from the regular embassy buildings because we wanted to do also a kind of a sculptural achievement and as a kind of a gift of the country to the city, and also, as you see, no walls. So we have been doing a kind of haha who protects the embassy because it's necessary to do walls, but we could overcome the problems of having a barrier between people and the building itself. Here some views of the interior, and here in the night with the reflecting walls who multiplied the effect of the sculpture itself. Finally, I come to the building here in Muscat, from which we are all so proud. Like I say, we are a family company, and I have my son Michael, part of my company, but also Gabriel, who is architect as me, architect and engineer, who also teach at Columbia University. He joined the company, and he's our design partner for this particular project. I am, and Michael also accompanying him, helping in the project, and bringing, you see, also a sign in this city at the level of this what you deserve. And putting all our heart and putting all our energies, you see, in delivering a beautiful building. And I have to say I am particularly grateful, to the client for the comprehension and also for the interest, and also because you see, in old architectural tradition, studying old books, you see, many things goes over the number 3, like a triangle. For example, the 3 qualities of architecture are utility, firmity, and beauty. Utility means, the thing has to be useful, has to be serving the people, by its function. Then it has to be firm. But firm means not only that they need to be stable, they have to go over the years, because whatever we build survives us and remains there as a heritage. Very important. If we look back to the heritage we have received and we are so grateful, you can be sure our grandsons, grand-grandsons, they will look also back to our time and see, those has done that. Now, the other is beauty, and beauty is a gift. Beauty is something God-given, you understand? But comes also from the harmony. Even many people say it even comes from the order. It has to do with the intelligence and with the mathematics. The shape we chose for this building is a very mathematical shape. It's a Möbius band. It's almost a pure mathematical shape. And at the other side, it has a vocabulary, a modern vocabulary, but try to relate, you see, into the future. Now, you see, getting back to this question of the 3, also a good building has 3 components. One is called projectio. The other is called constructio. But the first one, most important, is commissio. Is this who gives you the job? The man who wants to have this building, or the corporation, or the people. Very important, very important. There is not a single good building in the world without a good client. You understand? Even an architect who is not so good, or a modest architect, can also achieve something, working with a good constructor, a good client, and make his job in a proper way, in a professional way. But anytime you see a vision, is a client behind it. And this is very important that I emphasize it, because the briefing was do a building looking towards the future. Anchored in our tradition, but looking towards the future. Make a statement, towards the future. You see, and I understand that very much looking at a bank, because a bank lives today, They are bank institution, 800 years old. Even, the banking, has been always part of the economy of the countries in a way or another, fundamental, for the development, for the evolution, even in the everyday life of people. But you see, they are more than ever through the modern technologies, and so they are today even modern and actual. And we are very proud of this ideal of the Bank Sohar and all the people who has commissioned us this job. And like I said, you see, never before we has worked so much as a family in such an endeavor. So now, finally, I want to hear also another beautiful image in the middle of the landscape. And my last word is shukran. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
I must say, your last building is the best building. So let me ask you a few questions. We will come back to some of the themes in your lecture. But in this lounge, there's a lot of young people, students, young entrepreneurs, people who are starting maybe their life like you have started when we talked in New York. What is your advice to them?
Yes. First of all, a young person should be conscient that, let's say, if there is somebody who is living our time, are the young people. They are 100% part of our time, with all their incertitudes, with doubts. I have had them also, with what will deserve the future for me, how to start, what to do. So it's very important that they get conscious that they are living their time. And also that, and I tell that because this was my point of view, you see, whatever I have done at the time of my beginnings, I took it as it was, let's say, I have done a bus shelter, eventually with 2 other colleagues. I was working like it was already a railway station, with the same passion, with the same dedication, a small bus shelter. I have done a balcony, and I work in this balcony as it was already a bridge. And then, miraculously, the bus shelter transformed into railway station, and the balconies into bridges. I mean, and that is very important. So whatever you do, do it from the bottom of your heart. Believing with passion, and put your very best. You see, because architecture is also a very special thing, For example, a house is difficult to do. A big building, also a bridge, is difficult to do. But also a chair is very difficult to do properly. So the architecture, in terms of the intensity and the work that a person brings, you see, is independent sometimes of the scale. So even a small job can have so many interesting aspects, you see. And this is what I would like to say to them. They have, first of all, to believe they are living their time, and it is important that they catch every job they get, and do it, you see, from the bottom of their heart, independent of the scale. The time will come, and then will bring, through the sincerity and the honesty with which they work, they will bring them through. This is what I would like to say to them.
That's very good. Santiago, you helped cities shape with your architecture, with your buildings, and with your projects. Is there a favorite project to you, and why?
You see, I know how to answer it. It's a difficult question, but they are like the kids, the project. Who you love more, you love all of them, isn't it? Although I have to say, for example, that the project of the City of the Arts and Science, because it was my home city, because my mother was still alive when I was working there, my sister, my brothers, and all of that, also a lot of my relatives, has bring me a lot of satisfaction. Because, you see, I could a little bit give back to those who has been so important to me.
You showed Sohar International Building, and obviously the design is futuristic, very contemporary, in a country where a lot of the design and architecture is traditional. Our forts, our homes. What do you think this building and this design is going to add to the skyline of Muscat and Oman? and to this heritage of architecture in the country?
Yes. Well, entering here, I was looking this small, delicate, and almost like a jewel exhibition. You see where, and of course, for somebody like me who has spent all his life watching architecture, to see the point of views chosen by the photograph, the shadows of the elements in the doors and the decoration elements, and so is is first of all testimony of a witness of a tradition, call it like that, a secular tradition. There has been perfection also through centuries to arrive to these kind of things. They are also an enormous lecture or lesson in architecture, the shadows in the doors who are projected and creating like a new landscape who will change during the day when the sun is turning around and giving a kind of life to the building, isn't it, in a very elemental way, but very efficient way. So certainly, you see, in order to jump ahead, you have to have your feet very well grounded in the tradition. But there is this other aspect that I think is a challenge for all of us, that somebody invented those things. These things was not ever there. There was, somebody has had the courage to bring those forms. It was a craftsman who introduced this detail, or even exaggerate this detail in order that, that it delivers a shadow, or combine the proportions of the element, and so on. So there is also an enormous creative aspect in this, invented by people. You can be faithful to them, reproducing it. May be the easy way. You can also be faithful to them, trying to do new. And this is, in my opinion, also a very important thing. That we live in our time, as I say to the young person, you are living in this time. This is your time, the time who has been given to us. Let's do also element that hopefully, the coming generations look at them with proudness and gratefulness as we look when we see those elements, this architecture.
Santiago, let me ask you about climate change. Climate change. And the discussion globally is very big. It is major regionally, even locally. And the buildings and the environment of cities contribute to maybe the risks. My question is, what can architects like you and designers do to address these challenges and be part of the solution?
Yeah. Yes. Well, certainly, you see, imagine, I think that's an important question, and it needs also to be seen in a wide perspective. When I was a student, there was the first steps in a kind of architectural doctrine called postmodernism. So the people was starting to look back, studying the ancient monuments, and even doing an architecture, in my opinion, sometimes a little bit exaggerated, of reproduction of the same vocabulary, but brought something very positive. We learned to protect our monuments. If you look during the 50s and 60s, in many cities of Europe or America, they destroy enormous important buildings. We will never destroy them today. So they brought in our conscience the fact that we have an heritage. So they turn down Penn Station in New York. Thanks God they didn't turn down Grand Central. They wanted to do that. And then there was a group of people around Mrs. Jackie Kennedy, who wrote in the papers and protest. And there was the beginning of the protectionism of buildings, very much in the wave of the postmodernism. And this extends to cities in Europe. See, the French government saved Le Marais and many other things, important step coming out of this type of approach. Now, in our time, we wake up into a fact that, you see, we need not only to protect our cities, we need also to protect our landscapes, our nature, our rivers, our shores. The shores are unique, it's a line. It's so delicate, you know. It's mostly, you see, I mean, it's really the frontier between water and earth and all of that. You see, the waterfront and all these things. We are becoming a completely different approach of what is protecting, extending it to larger point of view. And then also, we are conscious that our resources are limited, that the climate is this what it is. And I don't want to make a long talk, you know, but I was confronted in Rio to this type of approach in a very radical way. You see, by doing a building, you see that is a small example to young people that the water in the bay can be clean just by, you see, by treating it in a proper way. So the building itself is epistomizing and showing, you see, a way, in a very simple way, but a very clear way, that it is necessary to take care of the forest, to take care of many other things. And this extended to buildings make us, you see, very conscious of this fact. This movable roof that we are introducing, you see, is not only inspired in the nature, because like I say, sunflowers turning and so, but it's also the desire to do buildings like the pavilion we are doing, who will be LEED Platinum. Now they are even a classification, or the embassy is LEED Gold and all of that. So we are very, very conscious about that. And I think it's also a source of renewal. That is the other interesting part, isn't it? The choice of the material, the approach to new materials, not being shy, not only necessarily using wood, which I have done in many buildings. For example, the La Rioja building, you know, with the waves, all the roof is done in wood and others. But also by using modern contemporary materials like carbon fiber or others, you see. So I think, if we look at it in the most positive way, is not only an obligation that we have to be responsive, you see, to this new preoccupation, but it's also a source of renewal.
I saw you made a lot of bridges in the world. And bridges are some of the ancient technologies for a human being. What do you see in bridges? Is there anything special about designing bridges?
Yes, that's look, let's go to Paris, you see, because it's a city I has been living around 12 years in Paris. You can also go to London, you can also go to Rome, or many other places, you know, many cities in Spain, Valencia, among others. You see those stone bridges, fantastic, you see. And then suddenly, you go through the highways here, there, even in the United States or other places, and then you see bridges who are not so sensibly done, let's say. It's a nice way to say. And what is the reason, I ask me? What is the reason? Why there is a change? Until 1900, let's say, 35, 36, 38, 39, the bridges are still very significant. People have designed wonderful handrail, abutments, they use stone, they use beautiful material, dignify the bridges, you see. And then after that, there is just, you know, bridges like, let's say, sausages or something like that. You know, they're all, you know, pieces of the same, going like that, no sensibility. And so the reason is one. I arrived to this conclusion, Second World War. In the Second World War, 60–80% of the bridges in Europe was out. And then they had to rebuild them very quick. It was necessary. And then they rebuilt it, you know, getting out of this what they could, because it was necessary to go across. And then after that, it was a boom in the 50s going to the 60s. And this technology get developed, you know, with the same sense of aesthetics. And then appears an establishment, a whole approach, you know, to the bridges, who is, you know, a bridge is finally a bridge, and that's it, you know, just people going across, and that's all. It's no more a landmark. It's no more making a place. It's no more Le Pont Neuf, Le Pont du Louvre, or things like that. It's no more. It's just, you know, bringing the people from one river to, from one shore to the other. And I think, in all modesty, I mean, by the way, also museum was the same until the postmodernism. The postmodern, they learned us museums are important. Then they started doing wonderful modern museums. until the Louvre of Mr. Pei and all of that, fantastic interventions, modern interventions in all contexts who changed completely the way. And today the museums are visited and enjoyed by thousands, 10,000, millions of people. Let's say the Louvre, 12 millions of people. They are bridges. They get in 1 month 12 million visitors. You understand? For example, our bridge in Dallas, they are 1 million people passing from one side to another almost per day. I mean, it's just important that we understand that sometimes it's just switching and getting in another cultural concept. You understand? Switching, why not? You can make a better life of the person who is commuting from one side to the, when the bridge is salutating him and say, I'm here for you. You understand? Or for the visitor, the person who will just go across the bridge and will never more come there and say, oh, very interesting. You see, and I think it's important that we recognize that, finally, that the built environment is important, isn't it? And we have to take care of it. Because it's our environment, is also our life, everyday life, the life of thousands, and also our heritage. Is this what we are delivering to the coming generations?
Thank you. We can ask for questions from the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Calatrava. As they say, art is not what you see, it's what you make others see. And today, you really made us see what art is, and you made us see beauty. In this case, beauty is not only in the eyes of the beholder. We were all able to witness. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and for the great lessons that we learned.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is now open for any questions. I would encourage all of you to join in with the conversation with your questions. There are people from the organization team with mics, so you can raise your hand. Yes.
Sir, looking at your design and the complex of your design and your orientation from your design, do you think from cost point of view, this design and from time frame will not be as a conventional design, it will be double? And this is time frame because some of your project, it delayed when it come to execution. So how you from cost effective, how you think this is going to be domain in the future in this particular project?
Yeah. Well, you see, I agree with you that many of the projects I show here are difficult projects, per nature. You see, let's say the reconstruction of Ground Zero was a very difficult project. Then, indeed, you, as an architect, you are a part of a team with which the client plays a very important role. Now, you see, let's say, I just give you a series of examples. The station in Liège took 12 years to build. 12. Because it's difficult. You understand, the trains has to pass. You have to, I cannot enter into details, and so. With the same client, the National Belgian Railways, I'm doing a second station in Mons. I mean, I have worked well in Liège, otherwise I will not work in Mons with the same client. The reconstruction of Ground Zero, of course, there was people saying, in 3-4 years we will be finished. It took 14 years. You understand? And we are still working with the Port Authority in the reconstruction of the church. The same client. I mean, of course, the client is the Greek Orthodox Church, but the project manager is the governor and the Port Authority. So, I mean, you see, it's just to give you, it's very important to see those things in the vast complexity of a work who is done with an architect heading it, you see, but also with a good client, close to me, like the Port Authority, who has, by the way, 70,000 employees, from around 3,000 are architects and engineers. You see, I work with them, I lead the project, and also 14 years, you see, to achieve this project. So finally, what I want to say is that that if I has not been working in a proper way, deontologically and professionally, I will never be able to build 7 railway stations all over the world that I have done. I mean, it's very important that you see that, you see, in a very professional way. You know, people can say, people can comment, you know, the press can say, you see, or whatever, you see. And once you became also a name, like Calatrava doing this station, and another one, and another one, and another one, that you became part of the, so you became also in a way, it doesn't matter, you know, but a certain target. You see, so that people say, oh, the station they announced, you know, the reconstruction of Ground Zero will take 3 years or 4 years. Still, the tower number 3 is not built. They want to start soon, but it is not yet built. It's not yet finished. So, I mean, it's just to give you a little bit, once you are part of this, what it counts is to work hand in hand with your client to deliver the very best. Of course, yeah, they are also public works. You know, you are very exposed. You know, the press is interested in to know how much it costs, and there is also a lot of competitivity. You understand, in this kind of thing, many people would like eventually to be part also of the reconstruction, which I consider is, you know, has been for me and in my career an enormous honor, you know, to be part of.
The formation of your construction mainly precast. I can see it is precast. You're trying to do a lot of precast things?
No, you see, yes, let me explain you. Let's say mostly I address, you see, the projects by the use of industrial materials. You see, for example, steel, concrete, and I try to adapt me to the techniques of the place. It means, you see, that you need to see what can you do in New York, who eventually is different from this what you can do in Liège, you see, in Belgium, because you have, for example, about precasting, the techniques of precasting in Holland, who is very close to I mean, it's the neighbor country, are enormous good. We have built all the parking areas in the 2 railway stations, in Mons and in Liège, by using precast concrete. So you really look around, you know, what is doable here and what is better somewhere else, you understand? And for example, we are building the National Pavilion in Dubai by using carbon fiber. But we discovered, you know, that Alinghi and this enormous boat, you see, that Oracle and all of that for the America's Cup are built in Dubai. So they have a very sophisticated industry of carbon fiber and very competitive. So we are doing the roofs of the pavilion are all in carbon fiber. So, I mean, it's very important and also has to do also with the so-called carbon footprint because the way of transport is short. You see, sometimes you have to take in account that maybe some things can be much easier fabricated far apart. So it's, like I said, but finally the resume is that here. You see, I look back to my works and you see, I has done always very close hand in hand working with my clients. And the fact that I repeat, I have done bridges here, bridges there in something like 20 different countries, you see, shows that we are also capable to adapt us to the needs in this particular way to understand how to do things and successfully bring it to a result.
It was very nice to hear your discussion. I just want to know that any clue on the cost and the duration time? This building seems as a phenomenon to me. Can you please give us some more details on the costing, please?
If I can give more details? Well, you see, let's say usually the costing of a building is done today. Sometimes we have also, you know, our archives, and we can also bring a lot of information how this particular piece can be done. But we work with cost estimation. Mostly the client has a cost estimator and we have also an independent cost estimator. Both together comes and discuss about let's say about the cost of the building itself and they have to arrive into a common conclusion. Why that? Because you see, if I say, building in Switzerland, where I live, you see, I mean, a salary of a worker may maybe be $150, $200 a day or something like that, working day. If you work in another country, maybe the salary of a worker can be a fraction of that. So the costs are also very much local related through the labor and also through the disponibility of materials. And because that you need also to know exactly what is the panorama of the cost in every particular country. For this, we bring cost estimators. In some cases, like for example, the New York, I say the Port Authority has 70,000 employees, from which 3,000 around are their construction department. I work with them, leading them, but also they have their cost estimators. And also, in New York, you have also another very particular question, which are the trade unions and the unions, who deserves also a very special attention. Also, the client was taking care of that, in order to harmonize, you see, the quality of work and the quality and the security and all of that. Indeed, we conclude, and for this, I'm very proud, you see, we conclude this very long period of work of 14 years without a major accident. And that is also a very important aspect, because what is more expensive than the life of a person or the integrity, the physical integrity of a person? So, I mean, like I say, I address always the question in this very large and complex project, you see, hand in hand with my client. Maybe because the clients see that I am collaborating with him, I am helping, and I am putting my very best knowledge, you see, to help to bring the project through all these, let's say, aspects, is the reason why I have repeated doing a station here and another there, who are very complex subjects and very difficult to do, and doing them also not only as an architect, but also as an engineer.
Thank you. We have a question in the front.
Thank you, Mr. Santiago. And we are grateful that such an artist like you will have a fingerprint here in Oman. And we are thankful to the man next to you. I think he is the good client you have referred to. In every project, you require a good man, a good client to bring such an international caliber architect to our country. You are a true artist, and I truly agree with your notion that the most important element in a design is beauty, because these architectures and these buildings will outlive all of us, and they are a testimony to the high taste and to the culture that represents these people who lived once in this place. I would like to ask you, several questions actually, but I think the time will not be enough. One is, what is it about Italy? You guys seem to be very good in design, architecture, when it comes to leather goods, handbags, Gucci, all of that. Even I think the German designers, whenever they want to design a very good car, they turn to Italian designers. The second thing I want to ask you is that your projects are really artistic and futuristic and very complex when it comes to, I'm a civil engineer, by the way. So some of these projects are, a world class when it comes to challenge on how to build them. You innovate, and then somebody has to deliver. How do you deal with, you have worked all over the place. How do you deal with the authorities sometimes? Do they have enough comprehension and ability to absorb such complex designs and futuristic designs? Do they always receive it well? Can they understand it? And do you face a lot of challenges from them doing so? Thank you very much, and thank you for visiting Oman one more time.
Thank you. Thank you. Certainly, you see, I mean, your question has also a very important and pragmatic aspect, which it is this of having the permit to do those buildings. And I mean, you have also to deal with the code. The code is from country to country. I mean, there is a certain homogeneity. They are a standard who are common. In some places, it's also very particular for question of liability and questions also of comfort of the people, etc., etc. And you see, I mean, until today, we came always alone. Well, look, about Italy, I share the same admiration as you. You see, being somebody in love in Italy, and even in a way, I have to say that a part of my family is also from Italian origin, is my wife, that her father comes from the Italian part of Switzerland, isn't it? And, but I has had, since the beginning of my, since the beginning of my studies, you see an enormous admiration of Italy. Indeed, I have done several exhibitions, but the place in the world where I was always more happy to exhibit was Italy. Currently, I have an exhibition in El Museo del Real Bosco di Capodimonte in Napoli, and it is one of the 4 national museums in Italy. And I am really enormous proud, you see. The exhibition is also called Nella Luce di Napoli, who means under or in the light of Napoli. Why? Because you see, you are in the middle of the light of the beauty. You have Pompeii, you have Herculanum, you have Capri, Ischia, you have the whole bay of Napoli, then you have Il Golfo di Salerno, which all those wonderful places like Amalfi, Positano, Praiano, Atrani, Vietri sul Mare, Ravello, and all of that. I mean, they are magic places. You arrive there and you open your eyes and are full of admiration of how these people has been in the past and even today, you know, working with and delivering us an enormous heritage. So important that I bring this example because I think it is, you see, Picasso, Pablo Picasso spent in Paris practically all his life in France, and he went, I think, 1911 with Jean Cocteau, traveled to Rome behind the Diaghilev ballets for which he was doing stages. And he spent a while in Rome and traveled also with Jean Cocteau to Napoli and visit the National Archaeological Museum. He visited also Herculanum and Pompeii and so. Then his style changed. And he started the classic period to extend from 1911 to 1927-28, and is, in my opinion, the most beautiful period. He discovered Poussin, he discovered Raphael, he discovered all these painters and make this classic painting, extraordinary painting, in my opinion, in the light of Italy and in the light of Napoli and in the light of this civilization. So I share with you also the same admiration for Italy. And, well, I think maybe, well, I already brought you a kind of half answer. You see, that we have been successfully work in the project you saw before. Mostly of them, they are also public. So even the authority has commissioned us to do this particular bridge or this particular building. Of course, you see there is the code, and we also work with code consultants. We work with people who help us, you know, to understand, you know, what are the needs for fire protection in this particular way, for water protection in this particular way, what are the needs of high volumes, etc., and we try, of course, to fit and to match in the scheme. Sometimes we has broken those rules. For example, we project a building in Chicago who the crisis of 2008 stopped. We started building it. It was the tallest building in Chicago and the tallest building in North America. The building was 600 meters high, and we started building it, isn't it? And then the city committee approved unanimously, the project, even if it was outside of the rules for this particular place. And also the neighbors was also very much in page, with our proposition, and there was also no reclamation. There was really a very spontaneous, because you see, every place has a vein, has a kind of sensibility, very particular, and Chicago's are very proud about their architecture. They are the first city in the world who introduced contemporary architectural tours. So still, if you go to Chicago, you can make a tour in the museums, you can go and hear music and so, but if you want, you can join one of those tours, and then experts will show you this and that, and show you buildings who are maybe 50 years old, or 40 years old, or even 100 years old, of Sullivan and others, and show in detail why contemporary architecture is part of a heritage. And I mean, it's just to tell you, it depends from one place into another, but thank God, and until today, we work also harmoniously and bring also the necessary attention to this very important aspect of which it is working in a place and trying to comply with the rules and you see, with the needs in order to bring a project to fruition.
And I guess, Doctor, as you said, when you work with passion, eventually people will appreciate it, even if you break some rules. Yes, question there.
First, I would like to thank the board of chairman of the Bank Sohar and the Sohar board for this opportunity for us to hear such information about development. I'm not engineering, I'm a finance person, but I'm very much keen about the development in real estate. One of the things that really makes me sad when I go to many towns in Europe now, even in Arab country, there is no attention for the art, because there is a developer wants maximum income of the plot, and the engineering also and the architecture wants to give the requirement of the developer. How do you see, with your global experience on over, how do you see the architect and this career will be going in the future? Do you think that we will go to the lower and work with just no art, just work according to the requirement of multi-story and the requirement? Or do you think that the art of the engineering and development will be in the standard of what you are doing? How do you look to the career in the future?
So it's a very special question, isn't it? And I want to address it like that. Is beauty a matter of money? That is the question. Is beauty a matter of money? Then if you, I mean, when I was eventually, and I say that for the young people here around, who are interested in architecture, when I was maybe 20, 21, 22, I used to go with a backpack and visit the Greek islands, or visit, the Gulf of Salerno at the time. It was the beginning, before the tourism. Even I wrote works on Ibiza before any tourism was there. Even in around Valencia, the local architecture of Valencia, similar to the, not as beautiful as the details exhibit here, but the part of the everyday life of people was also very modest houses, but so harmonious, so beautifully mashing to each other. so livable, so human. So these are qualities. No architects, also, by the way. Just people, joining each other and saying, yes, you help me to build this part of the house, I help you there. You see, the street is common. We will paint also even the paving in the streets and all of that. We will even decorate it. We will bring plants because we are sitting outside, and things like that. You see, so it's not a matter of money. It's a matter of a sense of beauty. So it's the people by themselves, they want to have beauty, even if they have almost nothing. They build also with their own hand. They use clay, or they use maybe the cement of calc and stone, local stone, and so on. So you are plenty of examples, particularly also in this part of the world, that has been mostly preserved, you see, from the industrial period. You can go to your villages in the mountains and discover those things, as I have seen in Morocco, going into the Atlas and all of that. Fantastic villages, fantastic, all done just with earth. You see, I mean, the sense of beauty is immanent to the person. The person not only needs beauty, you understand, but also by himself will produce, also letting them work free and harmoniously, will also produce things simple, but I mean human, with a human scale, and so-called beautiful. So this is very important. We have not to relate beauty to money. You understand? Now, another tema. France, because it's a country I love also. I have been living in France. I started learning French when I was 10 years old, and I even was during 11 years of my life with my family also living in Paris. And let's say, for example, imagine France in the after-war period, when all those bridges was built, a lot of people coming from the provinces to Paris. They was living in very bad conditions. They was living in bidonvilles, so just done with pieces of metal and things like that, housing, in very poor condition. Then the state introduced, they say, we want to help these people, we will do HLM, who is a location, a very simple location, giving to the people a toilet, giving to the people a shower, having maybe 2 sleeping rooms, a small dining and kitchen. So they built all these things, and then they started doing even silos and big, that you can see today in the peripheria, mechanically, just after a scheme. You understand? The cheapest, the quickest, the blah, blah, blah. You understand? Then today are the places where nobody wants to live. I mean, both cases solving a real problem. I say, it was much better for these poor people to change into an apartment with a toilet and with a shower. It was well done. It was the intention was good, but the heart was not there. Do you understand? And today nobody wants to live there. Even they are difficult places. They are difficult places with a lot of insecurity, and nobody wants to be there, real ghettos. You see, so the heart is very important. We have this quality. We have to bring our heart in this, what we do. You see, beauty is not related to money. It's independent. It's something who merge. It's like gratitude. It's like the happiness of seeing the sun every day and a blue sky, or even the happiness of enjoying rain, or things like that are very simple things. And we have to distinguish, you see, and understand that even by doing simple things, as the people in Greece shows, and in the Mediterranean, and in your villages, and so you can create harmonious ways to live together without having to enter into the mechanical, systematical, and so on. So the question is very delicate to answer, you see. I think there is a way to do beauty and to do modern architecture. And as you see, for example, the station in Liège, you see 200-meter span is steel and glass and concrete. But I think, we all put the very best of ourselves, and we can make proud, the people of the city. You saw this, more than the half of the city, around in the celebration of the opening. So that is, in my opinion, I am proud of this type of achievement. You understand that?
Unfortunately, we have time only for one more question. I know there are a lot of people raising their hand from the beginning.
As a young architect, it's an honor to attend your talk tonight. My question is, there's an incredible balance between the structural power of the skeletal body of your structures and the poetry of their skin. How do you achieve that balance?
Yeah, but yeah, you use the word structural. You see, the structure is very essential. Is part of the essence of a building. It's also a way to be minimal, approaching a problem. Minimalism is a school of art, but it's an art. So the structure helps you to be essential, to be minimal, to translate the things in a very simple, very direct, also, I mean, in a certain sense, also even economic way. And you see, this is the reason why, you see, myself who started in Paris, I wanted to go to l'École des Beaux-Arts and study and became a painter, let's say. And then by case it happens, you know, May 68. And the school was destroyed, no school. So I went back to Spain. I was a little bit undecided. And then I said, let's do architecture. It's a good way, you see, so because it has, I mean, I started saying today architecture is an art. Attention, I say it's an important statement. At the time was not considered like that, but I was intuiting, you know, if I buy a book of art history, there is also a chapter dedicated to the architecture. So there is, architecture is an art, as painting, a sculpture, another thing. So I started architecture in the Polytechnic there. Once I was finished, I got fascinated during my studies about mathematics, exact algebra, calculus, mechanics, and all of that. Although I keep drawing and painting and I try to understand the artistical aspect of the profession and put it in the center of it. So I went to Zurich at the Polytechnicum and I entered into the engineering school from zero. You see, I arrive and I say, like another student, you know, the first year, and I have done 4.5 years of engineering studies at the Polytechnicum, where I also learned German, because one of the reasons why I decided to start it from zero, it is because the only thing I could say is Guten Tag, who means good morning, or something like that, so I had also to learn German. So once I conclude the studies, I was so fascinated by the, that I started, I have done a doctor work, a PhD or doctor in mechanics, So during 3 years, just pure topology, and there was born in the cellar of the Polytechnicum in a small shop, the first models of the cube sculptures, who are pure, simple, and very direct statical system of the behavior of my body. You see, standing, twisting, my head, you know, and things like that. They started by taking very simple models, you know, cones, spheres, and so on. You see, as Cézanne say, regardez, look at the nature in terms of cylinder, cones, and cubes, he says, you know. It's very interesting. And after that, you see, I began to work, you know, as a professional, isn't it? But it is very important to see that this way, you know, going more and more towards the abstract, the sense of abstraction, the statical model, and at the other side, the other thing I became is the sense of the empiric and the observation of the nature. I say the engineers well prepared, you know, for the future, because they learn from the nature. They look at the water, and then they became hydraulic engineers. They look at the wind, and then you do wind canal tests for buildings and things like that. But still, you know, it's the wind who move the plants and create turbulences and all of that. I do not know if I answered properly your question, but I think there is essentially in the observation of the nature, in the simplification, in the minimalization, in the approach to the nature of the material, steel, concrete, glass, and so, there is something essential, and from this essence derivate also, I hope, a sense of beauty, isn't it?
Thank you very much. There are a lot of architectures here and architecture students who, if we give them the chance, they will keep you here all night to be inspired, and hopefully they were inspired by today's session to give a print or a new landscape in Oman. Ladies and gentlemen, now I'd like to invite Mr. Mohammed Mahfoud Al-Ardi to present a memento of appreciation to Dr. Santiago Calatrava for being with us tonight and enlightening us with his information. Thank you once again, gentlemen. We really apologize for not taking more questions because we are kind of out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the 5th edition of Viewpoints. We kindly request all attendees to fill in the feedback forms available on your tables. This is in order for us to continue improving and future enhancing this initiative. The organizers will take care of collecting them towards the end of the evening. On behalf of Sohar International, I take this opportunity to once again thank our guest speaker, Dr. Santiago Calatrava, for joining us today's Viewpoint. And I would also like to thank all of you for making time in your busy schedules to join us here today. We are confident that today's session has sparked some inspiration in all of us and broadened our horizons. I would like to request you all to proceed to the buffet area to have your dinner. And thank you once again. I was with you, Hiyam Al-Jabri. Have a good evening and goodbye.